Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start off with the roll call, please.
President Dom,
Present.
Vice President Everard.
Here.
Treasurer Zimmerman,
Present.
Secretary Wazorek,
Here.
Trustee Leahy.
Here.
Trustee Zurich,
Here.
and Trustee Zeller here.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have a moment of silence and maybe a silent prayer for passing of the district volunteer, Michael. Jessica? Thank you. All right, public comments. Kevin, did you want to announce?
Sure, thanks. Just saying thanks again for the opportunity to engage with everyone this past week on behalf of the foundation. There was a collective sense of pride that was near contagious. It was great to be there with everyone. And then we also just want to highlight, I understand, like you sent out an email and the board retreat. So we've got that coming up in August, and we would love for you to be there. So recognizing it's a big commitment on a Saturday in August, still summer mode and things. But we're really anticipating a pretty dynamic day. And we're going to be meeting with the retreat facilitators here in the next couple of weeks and establishing guidelines and trying to think of where our priorities. So I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be great to have you there. Plus, there's going to be a dynamic breakfast with the pastries, and I understand there's a black bean. Was it a taco bar with a vegan black bean?
Food's always good. Food's good.
Keep talking. Keep talking. You got me interested.
Yeah, there you go. Don't forget about those good foods out there, guys. But no, anyway, thank you so much, and it's a great week, and forward to keeping the work together.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to 5.0 presentations. Let's start with me.
Alrighty.
For the 2024 Natural
Yes.
Heritage Report.
At the request of President Dom, I have a nice 2-hour comprehensive presentation for you.
Okay, look me up.
We'll start off with a little trivia here. Thank you. Anyway, we'll start off with a little trivia here. Can anyone guess which water body this is displayed here? Shown here on the screen. Henry County water body. Oh, look at you. Nailed it. Right off the get-go. Yeah, this is the Nippersink before the remeandering project. And the modern environmental movement in the United States created the district in 1971, as we all know. But in 1972, we had some federal legislation passed, the Clean Water Act. One of the goals of the Clean Water Act was to have water bodies that were fishable and swimmable. And I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't be interested in swimming in this particular stream. And I certainly would not expect any fish in this water body. So these are both water bodies at Glacial Park prior to restoration events at Glacial Park. And due to some forward thinking of environmentalists in McHenry County, we have the privilege to receive the ecological investments from these previous preservation and restoration efforts. And we get to experience that ecological compound interest, if you will. And the efforts that we place today will provide those interests for future generations. As you're aware, we just completed a successional shift here at the district. Both Brad Woodson and Collins have been here for a long time, and you'll meet our new conservation ecology manager on Monday. But obviously a different face here in front of you tonight. We have a little picture of Ed there side. But due to their efforts, we have enjoyed all of these ecological investments, as did the smallmouth, the osprey, and of course the paddler at Nippersink. Here you see a picture of folks sowing seed along the banks of the Nippersink. And for reference, this past fiscal year 25, was the second highest seeding effort at the district. We had 112 planting projects seeded or planted on 968 acres. Staff and volunteers collected 5,447 pounds of seed from 124 species. That valuation is $186,000. This compounded over time since we began doing seed collection and reinvesting in the land for collected seeds is 31,000 pounds collected and $1.7 million value since 2006. Just as one cannot pull erosion map through the water by oneself, we can't do this conservation mission without a lot of partners and also strong public support, as we saw from last year's proposition question, both here in McHenry County and throughout the region. So it's with those partnerships, and I have them on page 109, those ones that we work with, around 23 organizations that advance conservation that we work with. And then, of course, the partnership preserved 925 acres through the Hackatech group. And those partners were Open Lands Conservation Fund, Illinois Audubon, Illinois Clean Energy, and the foundation. That purchase was a $60 million purchase that ecologically connects around 6,000 acres of open space, connecting the districts, Glacial Park, and North Branch Conservation Area, and then also Courier Trail. This one here is probably my favorite slide on the deck because it really just shows how many stories there are to conservation. This is a Muscle Move as part of that Nippersink Creek Restoration Project. And last year we had, through our Plants of Concern program, 28 trained volunteers. They monitored 67 subpopulations on 29 rare species at 17 sites of the district. And one of our volunteers actually discovered a new record, a state threatened forked aster, and we only know of it at one other site. So this is important for having genetic diversity of our stocks. Also in 2024, we had 42 site stewards. Those are dedicated stewards to specific sites, and they're on 24 different sites. We've been trying to do more co-stewardship to increase the program and also for information sharing. There was 242 restoration volunteers and 90 that were not registered, for a total of 374 total restoration volunteers, and they contributed 4,504 hours. If you apply that federal rate of $34.79, that's $156,000 volunteer investment to public service and public lands here in McHenry County. So with that, last year, 2024 was a big year for us, but it was also the 25th anniversary of that phase 1, 1999 Nippersink Creek Restoration Project. And fittingly, we were hoping to have phase 5 done last year, but we had difficulty getting the permits. But this year we are planning on doing that final phase 5 of the Nippersink Restoration Project, fittingly with partners. So to the north on the Open Lands property, Friends of Hackatech, we'll be working, and then the district will be closing that final section of the previous ditch at Glacial Park and then remeandering Pickle Creek to connect to the site. The LPNR division is broken up into 4 different departments: Land Preservation Administration, Wildlife Resource Centers, Restoration Ecology, and Conservation Ecology Group. Our information systems are underneath Conservation Ecology, but we utilize information on all those departments, and information systems also provides data and information to the district as a whole. One piece of information that we used to develop the land preservation plan was the Illinois Natural Areas Inventory. INAI is the acronym. But that inventory evaluated the entire state and found that only 0.07% of land was in a relatively undisturbed ecological condition. So if you back that out, it means 99.993% has been impacted by man on the landscape. So you can't restore it until you preserve it. Land Preservation Administration had a couple preservation projects last year. One of them was a transfer at Goose Lake from a permit compliance issue. So 26 acres were transferred to the district, and then we also purchased a 15-acre piece at Beck's Woods, and that's the picture on the left. The picture on the right kind of shows all the protected land. One caveat there: the Hackatech boundary is just the conceptual boundary. Not all that land is protected. It's just the Hackatech footprint. The light green on there is the district holdings. And I provided a few graphs in the report that kind of break down those preserved. Wildlife Resource Center, they conducted 117 public programs last year. They responded to 2,400 different phone calls, primarily to wildlife. So through our public response policy, the wildlife questions get sent to them. And they admitted 200 animals for rehabilitation. They're involved in reintroductions, and one of the successful programs is the reintroduction of the smooth green snake, which you see pictured there. The right is pictured of a bald eagle release. Last year, we collected 126 eggs, hatched 111. There was 13 that were not viable, and then released 110. One had an issue with deformity. And those get released back to the area that they were taken from. One thing that's a little bit different from that Head Start program versus Blaney's turtle, when we first started the smooth green snake, we tried rearing them to a year and it just didn't work well. But we can hatch them at a greater rate, and then we just return the neonates to the land at that greater rate, the greater hatch rate. Now I'm going to move to the executive leadership team dashboard. This is a dashboard that was created for this group so that you can see our work as it happens in the field. And it will also be fiscal year reported numbers. So by fiscal year, you'll see the different calculations. One part though that I printed here or shown here from the directions is what we call effort acres. And again, effort acres are where we have management that's applied in layers on 1 acre. So you can have 7 different pieces of acre effort on 1 acre. And when we want to subtract those out, that's when we get the land summary, which is the cumulative. So those are just 1 acre. And that'll be a little bit more explanatory when we get into the ELT dashboard. And then Christy handed out the password for this, and then we'll get you a link and procedures to do that as well. Sure. All right. The first one here is the land preservation dashboard. And we had talked about this multiple times over past years, but there's this idea out there that the district just continues to buy all sorts of land. As you can see, the major land purchases were really concentrated in this area, and the largest decade was 2001, 2011, and that was primarily through the bond referendum, land acquisition bond referendum, 2001, 2007. So one cool thing about these dashboards is in the middle, you can zoom in, they're interactive. So if you want to know some information about a specific site, you can click on a specific parcel. And this will get more interesting as we go through some of the other ones. Over here on the side, if you just kind of highlight at each site, you can see the amount of acres for each site. And if you have interest on how those holdings are broken out, it'll be right here in this little taskbar you can scroll over. So that's what right here is why we say we have approximately 6,000. Prescribed burn dashboard, we're getting a little bit more exciting on this one. As it pulls up, you're gonna see the interactive map in the beginning. Last year, we had 1,800 acres of burning take place. One thing that you may see that's a little bit different in the heritage report this year is in the past, we said, yes, burning is one of our most efficient tools for land management. What we did is we applied the costs by taking a look at staff salary and benefits and all the people that participated in the burn. We also added in some of those volunteer services and used that same $34. But the range in total burn costs, just for reference, $365 was the lowest in the range, and that was a 1 acre burn on the home prairie, and it was moderate difficulty. And the most expensive burn through 2024 was $6,631 dollars on a 32 acre burn that we said was difficult. So that was at Glacial Park, and we had continuous fuel outside of it. So you need more people on those to make sure that it doesn't escape. So that's the range, and the cost range per acre. Low end is $7 per acre, high end $675. The mean cost of $127 per acre. So that just provides some real figures to the cost for that. $675 per acre are those smaller burns, but they're really important burns because they're usually taking place on high quality natural. But this burn event here, if you zoom into this interactive map, you actually can expand the map like so. and then you can see where the burns have taken place. There we go. And then what you can do with each one of these maps is you can open that little tab where it has the stack symbol, and that's going to be the different layers that you can turn on. So if you're interested in the cumulative history of burns, you can turn that on, and that's all the areas that the district has burned over time. Turn that off, you can see, okay, yeah, we burned that many, but how frequently are we burning them? Or what we like to view as our fire return interval. So you can see Glacial Park's had a lot of fire. Throw on legend real quick. Right there, as you can see these areas right here, this is a high quality natural area, has over 10 burns on that management. As we continue on, you can scroll through all the different types of management effort. And you can see per year, every fiscal year has been processed. So those are numbers that are true. And then you can see the month total so far. Those need to be processed at the end of the year. So that's just kind of a track on what's happening. You can scroll through and work through these ELT dashboards as you have time. Our chemical treatment.
Gabe, one quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the burns, what's the importance of lighting?
So a lot of different reasons for that. That's a natural ecological process. So for land management, we're trying to return those natural ecological processes, restore the hydrology, and then have natural disturbance. So we do that for natural communities that are fire dependent ecosystems, but also we'll utilize it for brush management as well for the invasive species. So we use it as a tool on both just for ecological maintenance, but also ecological restoration. This one here is just going to be the total summary. So if you want to take a look at all of the land management occurring, you can see that is 5,200 acres last year, and you can see how it's broken out by different management technique. This is the question that gets asked from the board quite often: is how many acres are we managing? And this is that cumulative summary. Currently, we are managing around 16,000 acres. That's an acre of land that has seen some type of management effort on it. I'm not going to go into the hunting one, which is the last one, because you guys get the annual report for the hunting. But real quick on the farm dashboard, if we look at the interactive map there, I'm going to blow that up. You can see where all of the different row crop and agricultural leases are here in the county. And you can see what type of farming is occurring at those individual sites. So real quick for the working lands, we had 5,188 acres of farm leases, 70 active leases, 37 of those were crop, 6 of them were conservation and agriculture. And that is something that the board approved in 2002. It's a voluntary program, but it provides for additional soil regeneration, soil health type measures for those leases. And then the producer gets an extended period of lease of 6 years for that. And that's looking at improving soil quality, keeping additional crop residue on the fields, having a good crop rotation, using cover crops, and then having soil fertility and nutrient. And of course, as you saw on the cover of the heritage report, we do have the bison, and everyone likes the bison. There was 33 acres of oak savanna and cool season pasture there, 89 acres of prairie reconstruction, and 65 acres of oak savanna that is being grazed at Pleasant Valley by bison. Finish up here presentation. This is summary of I had the last slide. Anyway, it's a summary of the 2024 calendar year, 2025 fiscal year report. With that, I can take any specific questions. Yes.
Oh,
So when you harvest seeds and then you plant them on different sites, that's what I assume. So when you plant the seeds on different sites, are you planting the seeds from the same plants that are unique to that site? Or are you bringing other plants in to that site that might not have discovered on that site?
So Lori will bring in the seeds, she'll have an inventory, and then she'll create seed mixes. So if we were to look at that ELT dashboard, I'm not gonna pull it up right now,
Right.
but if you look on there, it'll show what seed mixes have been sown. So we have the specific species go into their respective seed mixes, and seed mixes get sown on the soil unit that is appropriate for that.
But those plants from those seeds might not have been found on those sites that are getting seeds. But it's a general McHenry County,
Right.
you know, your county area seeds that would make sense to put on. the
Yeah,
site.
we would do two different type of effort. One of them would be reintroduction. So if there's an area that is part of a prairie reconstruction, for example,
Sure,
no seed there, and we would be putting seed that doesn't exist. And then we also may do enhancements, so placing seed where it doesn't currently exist in the restoration. And then that also can happen, we'll just do a regular enhancement. Let's say there's a weed issue or something like that, and we want to enhance that prairie as well. The species may be present, but not in enough abundance. And that is another enhancement type effort.
but you would not do this, would not have seeds of rare plants put on different sites, for example.
Rare plant follows a very.
Yeah, it's a whole different,
Yeah, different process. I'm just talking about general.
yeah, this is more of a generalized.
Yeah, so Lori will do actually hand pollination for some of our extremely rare species. And then we're not collecting seed on.
And don't we actually trade some seeds too? Like, you know, if we have an abundance of some in another district.
We are working on that. Well, yeah, there's a couple agreements that we're working on right now that seed sharing.
But it's a great report. I mean, a lot of work that went into it. One thing I didn't see, I know it was last year, the year before, we reported we planted 2,000 trees. Didn't see anything on there. Is there any update on that effort? Yeah, just
I
overlooked.
think it's in there. You said you're only to page 54, right?
No,
Oh, you got
that's
it.
where the bands were.
The bands were in
51.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in this seeding and planting.
Oh, okay.
I can get that figure for you.
I know it was 2,000 a couple of years ago. I just wanted to see if, you know, we at the same pace or.
Those are big.
Off the top of my head.
We have a number of tree planting programs, so and I can get you those figures.
Yeah, the bats,
Yeah.
to me, that was the most amazing chart that showed 1,200 back in 2014, we're down to 75, you know, come out of the barn. And, you know, I noticed that white nose fungus thing. Is there any fungicide or anything we do to make that barn more habitable to try and get the population?
Not that I'm aware of. I did find a tree figure though.
Oh,
It's 1,548 native shrubs.
thank you.
But yeah, I'm not aware of any anti-fungal.
So, but it's made, you know, that 75 is so low, but it's been that. So do you think those have some natural resistance?
It's a really good question. I know there's a lot of research going on into white nose syndrome. I'd have to ask our wildlife ecologist on that one. I'm not.
To me, it was just the most startling thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
Good job. Okay, new business. Well, first I wanted to ask about fishing thing at Gatwood. How did that work out, Chief?
It was great. We had one child that caught 58 wheels. He got the prize for
What was he using for bait? Hold on.
the smallest fish prize was 1 inch and 5/8, I believe. Another small bluegill, and the largest fish was a 14-inch catfish.
Oh, no.
So it was a great turnout. The group I was with, there were several small children, and many of them caught their first fish ever.
Yeah.
So just to be a part of that and just see the excitement on their face, it was phenomenal.
Excellent.
You guys were there, you saw it.
So you and your team did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Good. Let's review the regular meeting agenda. We'll go through that. Just want to, basically, judge's report authorizing the bid for the re-siding of the Ranger shop. During comments or anything on that? Questions? Authorization to bid for the fuel. 4. For 5 years, been working on that and I'd like to pull that. I'd like to see, I know we've gone through this many times, but different way to bid that.
Okay, so the request, so we're asking authorization to bid. It'll be on the consent agenda, but someone should us to have that.
Sean,
On Tuesday
Yeah, I
night.
want to request to have.
Yes, on Tuesday night.
On Tuesday night,
On
gotcha.
Tuesday night requested it be removed. And then, is there any additional information that we can provide you or that knowing of what tonight would be a good time to talk about if there's areas too,
Sure.
that you're looking to have something do differently?
Well, so about 4 years worth. But, basically, I don't think that's a very good job of bidding on our part, not locking price to hold. All we're doing is the margin that supplier is supplying us with, locking in that margin. So I don't think they get the same advantage of anything, period. So, private sector, maybe it's totally different. Can't do this in the public sector, but can go and lock in X amount of fuel for the year and through each month or different ways, know exactly what our costs are gonna be. And I know John and I have had several conversations about this and no other reserves and government entities do it this way. But if they told you to walk off the cliff, would you walk off the cliff? I think there's other ways of that. So I would just like to explore, one of our vendors that we use could maybe help look at the situation. Make some changes. We should also, just a thought. Sean, did you have anything?
No, I think you said exactly what I was thinking as well.
So, and we could in, prior years, right, we've done the board summaries that gave the explanation.
Right.
And then a direction by the board, if there was consensus, would be for us to change our specifications and to ask that they bid direct, change what we're asking, right? And so
Correct.
that's the
I can get that information, what might work.
And I don't know if this is something that you could request bifurcated, like, here's the price one way, here's the price. I don't know if that would work. If you could, I don't know if this would allow that to be done that way. Or just directly we go out, we see what we get and.
But yeah, let me do a little work tomorrow on that. Should talk to John.
Yeah, you folks just need to decide how you want us to bid it, we'll bid it that way, we'll try it, see what happens. We're, as President Don said, we're simply following what is the industry
direction.
standard.
Generator kicked on.
Well, let's make sure we're still recording and everything. I think so. Yes.
It's gotta
It's
come back
okay.
up.
See what happens. Talking board, I think it's on. They're still on. Can you still see us at home? We're coming through. Okay, we're good.
So.
A little bit of a power glitch here.
Okay, so we move down to 13.5, agreement with the County Division of Transportation. I don't think there's any issues there. Fellow expenditures for going to the conference in Orlando. Any questions on that? Okay, 13.7, professional development. Director of Land Preservation going educational.
These three, they just happen timing. It seems to be the time of the year with fall
Yeah,
conferences.
it's not, I mean,
So
I'm not
NRPA,
questioning or anything.
yeah, director, it'll be Caitlin's first time attending, with myself, and that's a national conference and
Sure.
opportunities in the future should, board members have an interest in attending. It's a great, professional conference. Dave is going to be speaking, was asked to speak at the, international conference, that's the Soil and Water District. And so this is an opportunity in both cases. There's some company that's done, both for NRPA, for myself and for Dave on, being a speaker. So that's a great way to be someplace and network in an efficient way. And then, of course, Sarah Rummel from our landscape, team, from our planning and development department, she keeps up her licensure, by attending that. So that
Well, that's an international conference you're going to be speaking at. That's fantastic. Right, wow. Good. All right. Any other questions on anything?
Yes, the one that's not to exceed $4,000 just seemed not in line with the others, and can you explain where that cost is coming?
Right, so I believe, in my review of it, and even on the cost for NRPA, I kind of rounded up because with not to exceed, you'd have to come back to the board and we're sharing.
Right.
So you get some efficiencies if you're sharing a room. There's travel, but I do believe it's additional days that are part of that conference. It's a longer conference. So there's hotel, plus there's a pre-conference tour, which is an additional fee that begins to add that up. We did take and equalize, we follow the government practice depending on location for meals per diem. And then, of course, usually the hotel is based on the conference, what that rate is, so that's negotiated. And then, of course, you've got your travel, but it's longer, it's a longer conference.
Looks like more people going too, so that would.
No, it's just
Well, it's one
basically
person going to New Orleans for the.
Well, yeah, the one below that
Senior.
has 5 or 6 people, so.
All right. Do I have a motion to,
So no motion,
oh,
no
we don't
motion
have to,
needed.
we're not doing this.
And the only thing I also wanted to
Yeah.
mention on the budget timeline,
Yes.
which is in front of you, is the September meeting is moved up 1 week to September 11th, versus the 18th. And that is due to the NRPA being gone, and we've got some big things to which to have with the, to be present, as Kate and I will be missing, so.
Okay, let's move on to evaluating exceptions to competitive purchasing requirements.
Okay. All right, so what we wanted to do this evening with the board, and we've been doing our regular monthly audits of pulling purchases, which has been great. And we've had recently a couple of items specific that were either sole source, and the question wasn't so much sole source, but it was the documentation for that. And then we had another where multiple quotes were unable to be obtained. And so 2 items came forward across through our process, and I thought this would be a great time just to let's have a conversation, take a look at our purchasing policy. Both of these cases, they're under the legal bid limit of $30,000, so it's something that doesn't necessarily come to the board. It would go through the regular approval process through our Director of Administration and Finance and then onto my desk. And then that would be that. But I thought that this was a great opportunity just to go through process and how we work. So we have 2 specific case examples. We did provide a copy of our purchasing policy that the board has approved. And the 2 examples that we want to go through is the seed drying trailer to start off with, and then the masonry services. So one is a piece of equipment, the other one happens to be a service provider. So anything you want to add on the seed drying?
The big thing about the seed drying trailer we wanted to get in front of the board is it's a sole source provider, but because of how specialized the equipment is, they're actually peanut dryer trailers, and then you just have a different size screen that goes in the bottom. So we did our best to try and find comparables, but there's no other manufacturer that makes that. So the examples we provided were the one that we'd like to get, and we do have one of those already, so it's the second one, so we can increase our seed drying capabilities, which ultimately leads to more seed collected and put back on the land. But we also provided examples of similar products that wouldn't necessarily work for us, just so you can see the line item, the cost. And then also another peanut drying trailer that is the larger version that we just don't have the equipment to move, but just so you can see the different ranges. The big issue is there's only one provider.
So in this case, right, being sole sources is very unique. It appears to fall within our policy to allow that to go forward. But just wanted to have the conversation that with sole source and being where we're at with that, was it viewed differently? And
So, yeah, we're not taking any action, right? We're just supplying information.
well, the information, right, and I think I want to go through the examples, because if in fact there needed to be a change to our policy of how we do things, then that would be another discussion to go forward. But in this case, I'm just kind of airing it just to say, bringing to your attention, normally, I just want to make sure our policy is mapping the way that we do business so that within the guidelines that are given, we're able to manage within that framework, right? If we need to adjust and do something different.
I just make a comment. Yeah,
Please.
so, I think some of this stems from, it was a couple of meetings ago when we were discussing the furniture that was upgraded, right?
Hmm.
And, I was talking about bids and things like that, and, there was so much history on it, but I do have to commend the district and Elizabeth for talking to me, having a conversation about it, that it was a great discussion and opportunity for the district to kind of, look at any inconsistencies in, number one, their procedures, but also how to tie their policies better to those. And just forward thinking, using that as like an example, how can they do a better job at, making sure that situations like that don't come up. And so we had that discussion, and I think that, Elizabeth and Andy are really just forward thinking and bringing this to the board just to be proactive about those future purchases and trying to at least think of things that may come up in the future if you can, to do their best. But so yeah, they're trying to work on the policy and look for the board's help in any direction for that. So, I'm happy to obviously lend an ear and any suggestions. In my daily job, this is things that I deal with federal contractors all the time. Questioning bids and how they go about acquiring goods and services with the taxpayer money. Yeah, so thanks.
Yeah, so again, under the bid, doesn't require a bid. Obviously, the documentation, this is very unique piece of equipment.
Sure.
The pricing is there. So again, in this case, I'm running through is to say, yes, this is good. They've done their research, they documented it, the report is detailed. And it sounds like as if I don't want to, but
Yeah, it's really good.
Wow.
it's raining.
Just a little bit. Monsoon.
Okay, so that's the one on the sole purchase. And in our policy on sole purchasing, I mean, there's specifics. It says, equipment or supplies for which there's no comparable competitive product is available or only one supplier. Public utility service from natural or regulated monopolies. Component or replacement part for which there's no commercially available substitute and which can be obtained only from the manufacturer. An item where compatibility is the overriding consideration, such as computer software and or a previously owned item, for example, a tractor that becomes immediately available and is subject to a prior sale. So we have it, it's pretty detailed what defines a sole source in our policy.
Yeah.
So,
Suzanne.
okay, so that one's that one. The second example is masonry services, and Don, you want to take that one?
Sure. This is the circumstance or the situation that of the masonries. We find it somewhat difficult to get contractors to respond to our requests for pricing and things like that. Especially when you're in those real niche areas, tuck pointing is a very niche area. And particularly here at Brookdale with a technique that's called weeping mortar. It's a special technique, and if you look outside these buildings, these mortars.
Sloppy mortar.
In a hurry. But, and again, that's what we inherited when we got here, so we tried to match it when, what we're finding is that what we hear back when we do hear from contractors that are not interested in bidding or quoting with the district is, one, they're small projects. Okay, and so, and two, there are a lot of additional government requirements. One I can bring up as an example, or different than the private sector is Freedom of Information Act requirements. Prevailing wage. Now, a lot of contractors pay their people prevailing wage already, they're union shops. Some don't, so when they look at our product, they go like, well, I'm not paying my guys on job A, B, and C prevailing wage, now I gotta turn around and pay them on job D for the conservation district here. And so they basically walk away. So those are a couple of examples. The last one, another, and I think this is key, is that when they are putting a quote in for a small project that has a lot of requirements, additional requirements, they're not guaranteed to get the project. So therefore, it's not worth their effort. A $26,000, $25,000, $30,000 is not worth their bid. I'm going to give you a much larger example. One we did go out to bid for, that's the Lost Valley Visitor Center replacement of the fire alarm over there. We had two contractors come to the mandatory bid walkthrough. And one of them was telling me about a $5 million project they were working on, Peoria or something like that, that they had recently gotten, and they were working. I think he said it was 5 or 7 million, something like that. That's the kind of scope of project. Now, they didn't bid on this one because it's a $120,000 project. So even a $120,000 project in those real niche areas are small, some of these. So with our masonry, what we did was we created a scope of work. We put an RFQ together. We shopped it out to those contractors that either have bid with us in the past, that are known to us, that have submitted bids in the past or quotes in the past on things, or have done work for us, or asked to be on our list. We sent it out to that group of people on a particular date. We followed up with them, phone calls, and we ended up getting one quote. At a recent directors meeting, we were talking about this, saying, yeah, we do need to have a conversation with the board about it, make sure that they understand what we're facing here. And I was trying to come up with a frequency number, like a word to say that, to say it happens frequently, it's probably over, that's too much. But Gabe came up with a word of often. It does happen, that, and I can think of an example of one just on the other side of the building. We had some abatement done to remove some asbestos out of there. Well, that removed the insulation out of that particular part of the building. We wanted to put insulation back in there. I believe it was somewhere around August or so last year. We had that first part of it done. The abatement was done. Now we were going to bring a contractor in to insulate it or re-insulate it, do some electrical work. Well, we went out for a quote on the project. We had one contractor come back with a quote, and it was only part of the project. I think one component was left out of it. We got busy with other projects, fall projects, and all of a sudden we're looking at this again. We're talking about this in December. What do we do about it? And I said, look, we got to go back out for quotes and see if anybody's willing to do this project for us. And that same contractor came back and said, look, I'll do all of it. I'll do the electrical part of it, and I'll do the insulation part of it for this price right here. And being now December and knowing the heating season was on us, we pulled the trigger. Also knowing that, if we didn't get it done by the 1st of April, we lose the money because we go into the next fiscal year. So to keep projects moving, occasionally, we've got to do that. We've got to make a decision. If we're going to continue to maintain these buildings, and knowing the challenges that we have got to at some point in time say, yes, I know this project says we must get 3 quotes over $5,000, but nobody is coming to quote for this. And, we called our people, we tried to get them in. And at some point in time, we got to pull the trigger and move. And so that's really what we're doing in this case with this silers, that's what we did. We need to move on that, so.
Thank you, John. So since there were not multiple quotes, and that is our policy to get 3 written quotes, it's not a big amount. And ultimately, when do we decide to say, or have we gone far enough? Have we gone and how much attempt and what needs to be in writing to build confidence? Should something be told that we've given it every best effort on behalf of the public, right? Done. I mean, really, that's what we're trying, and not to be to the point of because time and staff is out there doing that. We do not operate, we talked about as well. We do not have a procurement officer at the district that all purchasing goes through. It's decentralized. It ultimately goes up to the directors to review as budgets and to our administration finance department. So again, what's a reasonable, have what we've been doing in this case? Have we done a reasonable effort that would give board confidence to the public and the taxpayers that we've done our best, or it's not good? We don't have our.
Well, unfortunately, I think in society it's gonna get worse because I think there's people that just don't wanna do that work, and that's what's, there's less and less vendors or people doing that. I find that in my own life. Someone to do something, it's like if you can't do it yourself, it won't get done. Because, I don't know, maybe some of the smaller projects we could go in-house, I don't know. And I'm sure you look at that too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, the example of down on the other side of the building, we didn't talk about doing it in-house. And at the time, we were down a couple of staff members in building maintenance, trying to rebuild that team a little bit. And so we just said, look, we need to get a contractor. We want to get this done for the end of the year. So, I see both Larry, the supervisor of building maintenance, and I see Ben now the manager of the operations. I see them looking, in fact, we just had a meeting today talking about that building that in-house capacity to do some of this stuff. The example was some pest treating and things like that. Is there some things that we could do that where we could bring that in-house and start doing that with our own people and under the umbrella of our own pesticide licenses and things like that. Then we get to control the product, we get to control the timing, et cetera. And so that was an interesting discussion being explored right now. So I think, Chris, to your point, yeah, they're we're trying to build that in-house capacity.
And I think what's really important is, and if the governor signs it, and Andrew could speak to this, but one of IAPD's platform bills was to increase bid level, because again, these 2 projects are not to the bid threshold, $30,000, but that if the governor signs it, well, and have an intent that he will, it'll go to 60,000, and we'll have to come back to the board and we'll have to do that. And so then there's another threshold of our approval processes. Clearly, how do we adjust? We have our threshold. So what then needs to come to the board before we're actually not going to bid, or what are you going to provide myself and Andy as our director of admin finance? What are our controls, right? So I guess I'm planning, again, looking at this from that lens is that window, which is going to make things more efficient and effective. I mean, that's the purpose of the bill to do that, but that's still not going to address the issue of multiple bids.
Yeah, it's going to happen and it's gonna happen. More often, just completely understandable. I just think that, my suggestion always is the documentation, the documentation placed with, say, the invoice and the PO and all that stuff. There's something that's, because it's not gonna be every situation it's gonna be, but my suggestion always is you cite exactly what the policy is. And then under that policy, you give your reasonableness determination of why you went ahead and made that decision that you couldn't follow the policy. And that's all that's needed. You know, we're not talking about, you know, dollar amounts that's over that threshold. So anything under, I think a reasonable person or public could read that and come up with the same determination. Kind of didn't have a choice.
I guess I had a question. Do we currently do that type of documentation?
Well, that's where some of this came up, was from that furniture.
Yeah.
You know, when I had asked to have those invoices pulled, you know, my suggestion was, hey, I probably wouldn't have had a question on it had that invoice listed, you know, maybe even some of the background is completely okay. It's okay to go right overboard and you could have put something with that documentation when maybe the PO was written. There's always a note section on an invoice or POs where you can put some documentation.
Then the standard becomes what would a reasonable person think? Get the document.
That's right, yeah,
Thanks.
from my perspective.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, so legally, everything is being done legally. That's
Oh,
not the
sure.
issue. It's just this process and making sure that we're following board approved policy and that we're training and the time and effort, which I know it takes a little bit more time, but not that much to do it right the first time and get it all done. But we're, you know, this is a great discussion. And this is what the board, one of your roles is to help us with policy and to make sure that we're following.
But we don't want to hinder staff.
Well, we don't want to make bureaucratic, right? We've got to pull it, got to.
No, well, what I'm saying though, is that I think that with some documentation, right? So the effort put on that part of it would help relieve a staff pressure of feeling like I have to go and get 3 bids, like I'm gonna spend all this time digging for it. When you've already been in that situation, you already know, like John, you know, you're talking about the concrete, right? You already kind of know that that's a struggle probably area to find a contractor to do that. So walking into that, my suggestion is you would already know that that's an area you've been down that path before. You know what you can take, as long as on the other end of it, you're just making the documentation of that policy, reasonableness of it, that I think you could probably get away with not struggling and waiting till you get these bids in. Yeah. Right? I'm saying not follow the policy, that's what I'm saying, but I'm saying that you're gonna have situations, you've been in that position before. You already have a track record of history of that it's challenging. I would say I would just go the other route.
So the policy is being followed, it's the detail and the documentation. And if I'm just understanding, unless I hear differently, our policy is mapping well. I mean, we've got, and I'm not hearing that there needs to be any particular changes to it. But again, going through these examples, it ends to, we're following our policy. And so there's no, and that's why I just wanted to bring it forward in the event of 2 different scenarios. Nothing best to show the case studies here. Andy, anything as our Director of Administration and Finance that you see?
No, I think Sean saying is consistent with the said. We even have some form of documentation on the purchase rack that it's going to be supporting, not necessarily the privacy, but something you can see.
Yeah.
I think that's very doable. We usually do that anyway, but it's one
Right. Okay.
Going through that exercise.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, right.
All right. Director's report.
Okay, terrific. Well, again, thank you for coming out last week with the county board and the foundation, all 3 parties to be present. I just want to give a big shout out to the staff. One from the whole project of putting such a beautiful project together and allowing us to be there to celebrate in advance of the opening. It was a great time to share with county board members and with foundation board members, just to kind of, to get that chance to do that. So that's great. Saturday was a phenomenal event with everyone there. Again, all departments operating, there's a lot going on. It's great this summer. But again, a great event and great coverage. This Saturday, we do have our hike, right? So we will be joined by Village President of Lake of the Hills, Ray Wadowski will be joining us. And so I encourage any other board members or foundation members that wish to come out for the hike. And we are closed tomorrow. County is also closed tomorrow for Juneteenth. So offices are closed. And we will gather next Tuesday night and have a little bit of celebration. And then obviously Heather Brady is online. Heather Brady is the trustee that's been appointed to replace President Dom's seat. She will be in person next Tuesday, just to introduce herself to everyone. And she becomes effective July 1st. So that's all I have.
The hikes with Mike, do we as trustees have to go into the website and sign up, or just say,
Just come show up.
or just show up?
Yeah, just show up. That's all I have.
Just come show up and
They didn't kick us out.
Pretty cool. Not next week. Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
This was 9 o'clock.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, Lake in the Hills parking lot. And then Andrew's here. I just want to congratulate Andrew. He's going off to maybe share. We're glad to have him here with us this evening.
Oh,
yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so since my accident, I've been playing with the U.S. national Amputee soccer team. Was lucky to make the team for a third cycle, and we're attempting to qualify for next year's World Cup. So we're headed to Mexico first week of July for a little over a week so it's 8 teams competing for 3 spots coming out of this region. So yeah, exciting.
Wish you luck.
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, your inner Yoda, do or do not.
That's right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Public comments number 2. Anybody out there or here that needs to say anything?
I'm not seeing any raised hands online.
Thank you.
Well, I got just a quick question. How did the volunteer day turn out?
The volunteer day.
Yeah, was that today? Where we had I got a whole bunch of volunteers, at least from Scottport, who were
Oh, I
going
can
out.
chime in on that. It went wonderfully. You guys had about 40 folks out
All
at
right.
Lost Valley Visitor Center.
Excellent.
We did a half day out there with a presentation on Scott Porch, and then the rain held out, so they were actually able to go out and do some stewardship.
Yeah, it's a wonderful win-win, and it allows us as a business just to say, hey, we're partnering with conservation district, so thank you.
You know, we appreciate having that group out every year, and we hope that those seasonals and interns come and use the sites while they're here as well.
Yeah, thank you, thanks.
I'm thinking of a win-win too,
Yeah.
where the board members will work with the staff and volunteers on one day. I think that. You won't have to.
No,
Well, we would still.
Trustee emeritus, consider
Volunteer.
trustees emeritus and volunteer.
I think I'm expecting to see you at all the volunteer on second.
Oh, we'll see.
Good.
Anything else, anybody think of, come before? Maybe at all?
Recognition.
Next week. Next Tuesday.
All right, motion for adjournment,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
for moving seconded. Roll call please.
Trustee Leahy.
Yes.
Trustee Zeller. Yes. Trustee Zurich.
Yes.
Secretary Wazorek.
Yes.
Vice President Everard.
Yes.
Treasurer Zimmerman.
Yes.
And President Dom.
Oh.